Welcome to Six Figure Coaches with Luke Charlton, where every week we interview a successful coach and break down their business. We take you behind the scenes in their marketing, advertising, and sales campaigns. We show you what's working. We show you their frameworks, their proven strategies, so you can implement them in your business to grow. Now let's bring on this week's guest. Here is your host, Luke Charlton. Hey, this is Luke Charlton here, and welcome back to another episode of the Six Figure Coaches Show. Very excited to have you here, and very, very excited to bring on our guest in just a moment. I've got a very established, very successful coach that I'm very excited to interview. In just 1 minute, excuse me, I have a sip of my coffee. But before I bring her on, what am I going to promote today? I'm going to promote the Hermit Hole again to let you know that these episodes are premiere inside the Hermit Hole. So if you just go to thehermithole.com, that'll just redirect you to the Facebook group. And if you want to watch these interviews before anyone else to get access to the strategies and tactics, the marketing processes that we discuss on these interviews with the successful coaches that I interview, then all you have to do is go to thehermithole.com, join that. It's a free group, and we premiere these episodes every Tuesday. This is US time, every Tuesday inside the group before they go onto like the podcasting platforms like iTunes and Spotify and Stitcher and all those, as I said, the audio podcast platforms. So with that being said, go to the Hermit Hole and join that group. We've got a lot of other great how should I say it, workshops and content and trainings in there that are also free to help you grow your business. With that being said, let me bring on today's guest. Now, today's guest, I don't usually like read from the bios, but I'm going to take this is just like a snapshot of her bio. Okay, so she's an international award-winning consultant, keynote speaker, radio show host, 5 times best-selling author. She's been on popular television shows such as 2020, CNN, E! News, like Gene Simmons, Family Jewels, ABC, NBC, SBS, Fox, and PBS, and appearing over 2,500 radio shows. I mean, I could go. This is a long bio. She's also a doctor. I think she's got a couple of PhDs. So yes, I actually shared the stage with Sir Anthony Hopkins, Jack Canfield, Les Brown, Brian Tracy, and many others. So again, I could keep going. I won't though. I will introduce her. Let me bring her on. Let me just unmute Dr. Andrea Adams-Miller. Welcome to the Six Figure Coaches Show. Very excited to have you here.
Well, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here with you, Luke. I appreciate you.
As I mentioned. Now, what I love to do, getting into these interviews is just to give the listeners some context, some background as to how you got into this coaching consulting world. Like what is your story?
So my story came in a really interesting path of lots of views along the way. So my whole path actually started when I was a kid, and that's usually unusual to start your career when you're a youngster. But I was an only child and a very lonely child. And so we didn't live around other kids. So I read books all the time and had a great wealth for knowledge. And I learned quickly that if you excelled in school, then your teachers paid attention to you. If you volunteered, then people started paying attention to you. And that's how I fit into different groups, because I was a kid who only hung out with my parents' friends. So I didn't have that connection or that regular childhood that other kids had. So and then the thing that actually led me to my main career was my parents used to run road races. So my mom one year won 53 first place trophies.
Wow.
So
when we were going to. What do you mean by road races? Like,
where they would run like a 6K or 10K, yeah. And so we would drive all over the place in 2 or 3 races a weekend. And on a race, you need to have the directions to get there. Once you're there, somebody has to stand in line for the packet, pull out the packet, find out the details, find out the route, pin the labels on everybody for their numbers, and then keep track of what time are the awards, then track along the race, what their minute miles are and so forth. Well, even though I do multiple things within my career, I'm really known as a publicist. That's kind of like the thing that people knew most about me.
Yeah.
And as a publicist, I go with my clients to events, and so I already know ahead of time who I'm looking for to introduce them to. I track like
Oh,
where we're supposed to be when, what, and so it was like funny. Here I am, 7 years old, and who would have known that the experiences that we learn as a child can directly
yeah,
become
yeah.
what are major factors of your career.
Wow. Wow, that's crazy. So when did you actually start, like how old were you, like when you started turning this into like a serious business?
Well, it was in my late 20s. So after when I was 19, I worked at the Hancock County Sheriff's Department as a
Yeah.
corrections officer, and then
Yeah.
I worked in law enforcement. So that's where I learned how to manage people and be with people of all different
Okay.
areas of life, and be with the public. I also became a keynote speaker when I was 16. My Girl Scout
Nice.
troop. I was the leader of my, the child leader of
Yeah.
it. My parents were the main leaders, and we went to Europe with SWITS 85, Scouts with Interest in Traveling to Zurich. So I already knew how to keynote speak and do those things. So I
Wow.
was doing that. After I left law enforcement. But after I left law enforcement, I actually ended up opening a consulting business. And that's when I was traveling more and speaking on stages all over the world. And so that's when I became a business. And I
Yeah.
was originally known as the sexuality tutor. I
Yeah.
changed that name to Ignite Your Relationships because I was now being asked to talk beyond sex and intimacy. And the reason I chose that career is when I worked in law enforcement, first, I worked in the male ward all the time. So I got to hear all their challenges and problems.
Yeah.
And then I worked with 73 police officers that were male and got to hear all their challenges in their
Yeah.
relationships. And that career did wonderful for me. So, here I was in my early 20s, and I was speaking in colleges and businesses all over. And then I started being asked to talk about relationships in general, like
Yeah.
how does corporate get along with the factory workers and so forth. And so that's when it became super serious, especially when I changed my name to Ignite Your Relationships.
Yeah.
And during that time, Luke, is when people started saying, well, wait a minute, you're on all these TV shows and you're doing all this stuff. Can you help me? How do you make all these connections with the media and all
Mm-hmm.
these amazing people? And so one of my friends said, I'll pay you to do this for me. So I said, okay. And so then my second business was born, and that's the red carpet. He named it the Red Carpet Connection.
Okay. So that's what you're doing today still, is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. I still own the intimacy and relationship business, and I
Yep.
still do that by word of mouth, pretty much only.
Yep.
But I've worked with celebrities and all kinds of really fun stories.
Oh,
When
wow.
people hear about that, it seems like shock jock, but it's actually a really beautiful business, very clean and professional and
Mm.
beautiful. And it's really what led me to believe that all relationships are like our intimate relationships, like you and I. This is our first date. So we get
Okay.
to know each other. And those of
Yeah.
you listening, this is the first time you get to know about me. And some of you, now this is your, you've been dating Luke for a very long time. And now maybe you've been engaged now in his Facebook group and now considering marrying him and taking his coaching program. So
Fingers crossed. Hope they say
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Okay, cool. Um, so who do you work with? Do you work with like solo, like coaches, consultants, and experts? Is that who your main like
I
kind of
do.
target market is?
Yeah, I really niched down. I still, I'm open-minded to work with different people I let people raise their hand on who really wants to work with me.
Yep.
But my niche tends to be that I work with entrepreneurs who
Yep.
have been successful already, or multiple six-figure or higher, who already have this capacity to have multiple businesses or doing really well, but they are visionaries or dreamers and have this idea idea and they really want someone to help them take it and move it forward. They don't want to do the dirty work of, like mapping it through and doing the publicity and finding the connections. So basically what I do is they named me the dream maker. So
Mhm.
I make their dreams come true bigger than they dared to desire. And
Yep.
I do that through building billion-dollar relationships with
Okay.
both their fans, their followers, and the media, and that's through publicity and through my connections. So I have a golden Rolodex, so to speak, of over 65,000
Okay.
people, and 45,000 of those people I've actually met in person.
Yeah.
So
Wow. So
it's a
you're
lot.
helping them. So let's say they have an idea. Can you give me like maybe a client example might be help put this into
Yeah,
context?
I can. I have a newer client that I
Yeah,
would love to
sure.
share. His name's Jose Escobar,
Yeah.
and he's known as the Guatemalan pit bull.
Mhm.
So he not only takes a bite, he moves and shakes until he makes things happen, and
Yeah.
that's because he kind of looks like a pit bull and he's Guatemalan. But for what I do for him is he's built 2 six-figure businesses over
Hmm.
the last year and quit his regular job. He has a membership of over 235 people, 11 countries, and he has a morning and evening mastery program. So what I'm doing for Jose is I introduce him to people so that he can create joint ventureships and partnerships with different people that really add to his community from people
Okay.
that are in my Rolodex who are looking for that.
Okay.
So those sounds like some of the things that you do as well, Luke. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
I do publicity for him. So like right now, he's on another radio show where he's broadcasting his new book launch. So he has a new book out.
Mm.
And then I'm also the coordinator and planner for his 1,000-person event. So we're having 1,000 people show up for his CLA Global Summit
Mm.
this October. So not only are we doing the event, making sure the back of the room sales, making sure the speakers and the tickets are sold, but we also are reaching out to the public and doing the publicity through press releases and radio shows and
Okay.
newspapers, getting him speaking spots. So it's really, and I go with him to events as well. So we fly together to the events or meet there, and then I introduce him to people because I've been doing this for so many years and go to so many events. I am able to spot within a room and meet people very quickly. So I help him introduce people. So let's say it's you, Luke, and we're somewhere and we're
Yeah.
together standing like this. I would be maybe looking this way and see someone that I want you to meet. I'll go look and meet them. And now I always have a camera with me, and that's my in because I'm with the
Yeah.
media. So people are usually open to talking to me. And then I'll say, gosh, I really want you to come and meet Luke. Have you met Luke Carlton? Do you know him? He is just the most amazing man. Please, he's got this great community, but come and meet him. And then I introduce you guys together, and then I highlight you and talk about what you do, introduce the person to you.
Yeah.
And then I watch cues. And then if I need you to meet someone else, you meet them. And then if I need you to break that conversation now, then I finish them and I'm like, hey, I need to interrupt a minute. Luke, I needed you to meet blah, blah, blah. Hey, can I find out what you were talking with Luke about? And let me get you guys on the calendar to make an appointment.
Yeah.
So I'm doing that. In the meantime, I'm taking pictures of you guys while you're together
Yeah.
so that you have all those, memories of you, hanging out with whoever that may be.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah,
Now,
it's really fun.
I think one of the probably one of the things that you probably call it a marketing strategy, I think is the most powerful. That's probably, it's very underrated and not focused on in the online world, is the power of a network, right? So having, being connected to the right people. You look at like really wealthy people, if they were ever out of a job, just as an example, let's say that they're in a job like a executive CEO, if you know like other executives in other companies, right, and they know you and they know you're a good worker, you'll never be in need of a job, like in want of a job, right? You'll always be picked up somewhere else just because of your relationships with others. And it's the same with like us coaches and entrepreneurs. If you know other as an example, very successful entrepreneurs that run 7-figure businesses or whatever, and they know that you're good at what you do, you'll be never in need of even clients, right? Or even working with other people. Anyway, the point is, I think and maybe I'd like you to speak to this, Andrea, is just the power of a network. And then I want
Yeah.
to ask you about like what it takes to build that network and keep it going, because obviously relationships you need to build, right, and spend and add value to and add time to. So can you just talk to the value of a network, and then we'll talk about
Yeah.
what it takes to build it.
Yeah, so I refer to it as relationship capital. And to me, it's one of the most valuable assets that we could ever have.
Mm,
And consider this during the pandemic. That's been on people's minds over the last couple years. So, in that, when nobody had toilet paper, okay, if
yeah.
you have a really rich network, you're going to find what you need. So, you're going to be able to call a friend, a neighbor, a peer, a coworker, or whatever
Yeah.
that is. So I use that tongue in cheek because think about that, like what you mentioned, if you're out of a job or you needed something for a client, or if you're a printer and all of a sudden Magenta is hard to get a hold of, what other people do you know that have, those products or services to fill in?
Yeah,
If you're
exactly
a
right.
import export, who can do that for you? So this is how you can look at the value of your network.
Mm,
So if you look at the people within your network, so if you only look financially, we'll start with financially. So let's say each person that we're talking to, we'll just say a million for ease. So if each person is worth a million, and let's say they say average people hang around, can only be really operate with like 150 people as their, these are movers and shakers, and you guys are coaches, so you're movers and shakers, so there's about 150 people that you move and shake with, so that's 150 million. So chances are most of them are within that world as well, so
mm,
they have around them 150 people who are in that millionaire
yeah.
status. So already you see, if you take 150 million and then multiply that
Right.
towards 150 people with 150 people around them, even if we took the numbers way down, that's where I came up with billion-dollar relationships. Because if you only looked at it financially, or what their assets are financially,
Yeah.
those are billion-dollar relationships. But then there's so much more asset than that. These are the people, like during the pandemic when businesses were having a hard time, where we had to. I actually, it's very interesting. I made more money during the pandemic than I had in some other years, because I went back to foundation and started recalling people from my past and reorganizing relationships that I hadn't talked to in a long time, because I had the
Yeah.
time to do that.
Yeah.
And that actually led me to think differently, and to and sometimes think like I used to,
Mm,
and that foundation really helped. And that's where I realized that my greatest assets were. I mean, I always knew that my relationships were important. So I do sponsorship acquisition. That means I'm calling businesses and foundations and corporations and
mhm.
asking them for money for my clients. So I have to have a good relationship with them already, because I'm asking them to invest in somebody they don't know.
Yeah.
So, and then with those relationships, even if it's a new person or a cold call, I don't want anything to come in cold. So I already knew and looked up some and listened some about Luke before I came in today, because I wanted to already know you and
Mm,
have an idea of who your audience is and what they care about. So for me, I don't consider anything I do in my relationships. So I'll refer back to my other business, the relationship business, specifically, is that this is not a one night stand for me. So
mm,
I'm not here to sell you something and go away, hand you a business card and disappear. I want to know who you really are, heart and soul. Because if I know you here, then I can then look over the course of years and find out, what can we do together. Sometimes we're able to do things right away, so love at first sight, and get married in months or weeks or days. And
mm.
then other times we're just friends, and over that relationship, as long as we keep nurturing that relationship, we find opportunities to work together that we never suspected. So I want to give you a chance to respond, and I have an example of that.
No, yeah, no, I agree. Like as I said, I think the having building, it's something that's, as I said, very underrated and not really focused on, because we're, especially at the beginning of your business, I think when you're trying to just get some clients. It's more of just like, okay, just generate the lead, like get the appointment, get on the phone and close the client. And then you kind of on to the next lead and the next lead. And as for me now, I'm at a place where I've got my team do a lot of like the heavy lifting for me. I have a little bit more time to now realize, and focus on some of these more important things, like, because I'm building a lot of great connections with this particular podcast, right? So every week I'm interviewing very successful coaches, consultants, and experts. And for me, I'm thinking like, I need to build a relationship with these coaches. I don't actually have any particular goal, but I do know that having a strong network of other successful coaches is going to be, as you said, it's an asset. It's a great word for it. It's a very valuable asset that, again, I don't know how it will be used in the future, but I know that it's there if I do need to use it for whatever, another pandemic comes along or whatever. It's also just a great mastermind. Like, there's a wealth of knowledge in all of these coaches, like just an example, like look at all of your experience that I could have access to, or even not me, but even if someone, from my network came to me and said, hey, I've got this problem, I go, oh, Andrea, she'll be able to help you with that. I'm kind of making that connection, even though I haven't actually benefited other than making the connection, right? And that builds the relationship even stronger. So as I said, you often, you don't know when it's going to come into play. Some people do have a goal, like I want to build a network and this is what I want to get out of it. And that's fine. But also having it there as an asset is extremely valuable for a lot of different situations. That's the way that I look at it.
Yeah, and allowing it to develop to see what else is there, because sometimes it's not the obvious that you thought
Right.
it was.
Okay, right.
It's something else within the relationship that became important and valid. One of the things that I do, you said it may not benefit you in the moment, but it'll benefit you later. There's two aspects to how I do, relationships. When I make relationships or, between other people and introduce them, I do now ask them to have an understanding, especially because when I'm working with 6 and 7 figure and above people, I have created relationships where they made, millions and billions, and they didn't even remember I introduced them, and so, it is okay, because it's not like I just automatically knew these people. I've invested in having this. So for 30 years, I've been out and about and doing all of this. So, for example, the year before COVID, I went to 170 events.
Yeah.
So those didn't come free. I still have to travel. I still have to be there.
Right.
It's still my time. I still have a hotel. I still have
Yeah.
a flight. And even though other people may have paid for some of those, or my business has paid for those, that's still my time.
Right.
And so it wasn't until I started realizing that my relationships, the value of them, they weren't just gifted to me, or I created them. So because it's important also to me, though, if you introduce me to someone, Luke, I make a note of it. So I'm going to have that's my grandson, by the way.
Okay.
So if I meet someone, I instantly, here, I was just going to try to see if I can't think of who I can pull. I'm trying to think who I can pull up and not show my phone and on who's on here. But what I do is the second that I meet someone, if we're meeting in person, I take a selfie of us and then I text it to them. And I hand them my phone and have them type in their name, their email, and their birthday. Now I ask for their birthday because I call people on their birthdays as best I can. And say hello to them. But then because I've texted them, I'm able to follow up with them. And then periodically I just reach out. So if you look at my phone, flip it through, these are all just calls just within the last couple days, and text messages back and forth, checking in on people and seeing, how are you? What's going on in your life? And I'm not looking for anything. So I also track how I met them. So let's say, Luke, you introduced me to Bob. So I will put on there that Bob, in your notes of Bob, it'll say in there, Luke. So I'll know that Luke introduced me. And so should Bob and I have any kind of business that something happens, you'll be thanked, you'll get a commission that you didn't ask for, that you didn't even know was coming. And that's something I choose to do. And I think that's why people really like me and trust me, is because I've shown this pattern of always making sure that people are taken care of. Now, not everybody's 100%. Sometimes it's a by accident. I didn't even remember either,
Mm.
especially if I'm meeting like 150 people all at once on a red carpet,
Yeah.
hence the name The Red Carpet Connection. But that really adds to the relationship. And then that nurturing of that. So, for example, I reached out to my client, Jose Escobar. He was doing something during one of his events, and he was talking about people having one word be their goal for next year.
Hmm.
And I giggled because he's talking about the book One Word. And I said, well, wait a minute. My friend Alex Mendozian likes everybody to pick one word that describes who they are, and, like
Mm.
what's it. And I said, and Alex thinks I should have one word, and I believe I'm another word. So we laugh about that, what the difference is. So I reached out to Alex and said, hey, are you still doing the one word thing? What do you do? He does marketing online. He's a
Yeah.
guru behind all the gurus. And he said, Andre, I'm so glad you called, and then he's like, what are you doing again now? And we were talking about some things. And I said, I'm working with less people more.
Yeah.
Although I'm creating more programs so people can do some stuff on their own based on my knowledge and wisdom.
Yeah.
However, that's my core. And he's like, wait a minute, let's rethink this. And I got the nicest compliment from him. He said, you're right. I've watched you work, and you do such an amazing job. You know people, and you really care about them and want them to do well and to prosper. And he said, that's such a gift. And he was saying how he's doing some more fractional CFO stuff. And he thought, that I would be beneficial to some of his clients, and asked if he could refer me. Well, what a gift that is. And
Mm.
we wouldn't have thought about how to do business together again had we not had that conversation. And I wouldn't have just randomly called him because somebody mentioned one word. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so when you think of someone, call them. And sometimes I'll be driving down the road and somebody will pop up into my head, and I'll say, so it'll come, for you. And I'll say, Siri, call Luke, and I'll say, hey, Luke, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because, yeah, that it's that simple, actually caring. And
Yeah.
it is time consuming, but I don't consider it a time consumption. I consider it my joyous moments of the day is when I reach out to people and connect with them and find out
Okay.
what they really need in their business.
Yeah, absolutely. With no agenda, right? Um, so let me ask, is there a particular, you can kind of just give a high level thing of this. Is there a particular system that you stick to each week that you implement to, continue these relationships? Like, hey, I'm going to call like 10 people today, or like, what does like a high level overview of your relationship building system look like if you have one?
Yeah, it's similar to that. I do it a little more fluid than completely structured.
Yeah.
Especially the days I'm traveling. If I'm traveling or driving, because I live 2 hours away from every airport, I have three of them that are 2 hours away. So
Yeah.
that's 2 hours of talk time. So I just randomly, as I'm driving, think of someone and call them, and
Yeah.
then I call the next one, then I call the next one. And then, especially if I'm choosing, sometimes it just makes more sense to drive than to fly, depending on, like this weekend in Philadelphia, it just makes more sense for me to fly because of the times I need to be home and be
Yeah.
in control of my schedule. So I have 9 hours in the car to
Okay.
make calls. So I'll be able to be more functional of that. However, when I'm home, like if I'm in between things, like I only have 15 minutes between your show and
Mm.
something else I'm doing with someone else, I will randomly go through my phone and look for people I haven't thought of. I look at their names and then I say, hey, check it in. What's up with you? How are you doing?
Yeah.
So every day I try to communicate with a couple people and just reach out and let them know I'm thinking about them or that they crossed my mind, because they did. And even if I hadn't for a while, why hadn't I? Why hadn't I been thinking about that person? What
Yeah.
can I do
Yeah.
to get top of mind again? And that's what's beautiful.
And so is there do you just meet people now organically through your clients, or how are you introduced? Is it just through your clients? That's how you build your network, or like how do you actually go about That's
It's
cool. So we,
actually kind of reverse. So I'm the one that introduces my network to my clients. So,
right, right.
so they meet
Let's
that
say a
way.
coach.
Although
Let's say a coach just
although
getting
they may
started.
have their own audience as well, and
Yeah.
I do meet their audience from them. Um, it's well, I still do radio shows and podcasts. So um, by the early 90s, I had already been on over 2,500 radio shows.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
that's when, we didn't have, the internet. We were still just Juno and AOL dial up when the internet started for me. So I'm 53, but when I talk like that, it sounds like 100 years ago
Well, I
or
was.
something.
I'm old enough to remember that too. So
Okay.
I'm not that young.
Like, and but it's still going to events and appearing in virtual events. So when I'm in a virtual event or a virtual mastermind,
Hmm.
I meet people along in the side. So I reach out to them and say, hey, if somebody intrigues me, I ask them for their cell phone number. And
Yep.
one of the things I find interesting is, people show up to these events wanting to meet people, and yet they don't always share their information. I immediately go in and say, this is me, and these are all the ways to reach me. So however you like to reach me, and this is my preferred. I prefer to be text messaged. I
Yep.
get some people don't want to share their cell phone number. I'm the
Yep.
kind of person that's fine. If I don't want to hear from people, I just put it on mute, and that's the end of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's okay. And I do get sometimes hundreds and hundreds of emails a day, or I mean text messages. However, I'm more likely to see those than I am emails.
Okay.
And but what I was saying about that is, I'll be over there and I'll ask for their cell or tell them to text me, and they go, I will. And I'm at the end of the mastermind 3 hours later going, where's this text message? So
Yeah. Yeah.
so me, as soon as I get their cell, I text them right that moment with their name and
Yeah.
my name.
Yeah.
Right then. I mean, the second we say I will instead of I am,
Mm.
we might not do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You have to say I am. You have to do it right in the moment. I mean, it's really that whole get her done thing. You have to be fast and furious, because if you're taking action constantly, you're just going to be so much better with what you do.
Absolutely. I got a question for you. So when you're doing these check-ins a couple of times a day, how many of those conversations would lead to a client?
Um, let's see. So because I do, well, I would say probably I have a really good ratio. I would probably say my closing rate, so to speak, would probably be about 30%. And
So
that's either they're a client for me, a
yeah,
client for a client, or I booked them a gig, or they're interested in a sponsorship, or they're interested in I do lead gen for these summits, where I do
yeah,
sponsorship for these summits,
okay,
and amazing ROI for those. So those, yeah. So, but I'm not looking
cool.
for that when I call them.
Right, right. Yeah, that's one of the things I think is most important. Like probably one of the key things when you're making these check-ins is have no agenda and literally just call up saying, hey, what's going on? Like, what are you working on? Like, what do you need help with? Is that, have I got it right there?
Yeah, and sometimes I have a nonprofit called the
Mm-hmm.
keepsmilingmovement.org, and we're a mental and dental health organization. So we help save lives with smiles by
Mm,
creating a dose of hope to be resilient no matter the challenge. And
nice.
dose comes from when you smile, you release four neurotransmitters: dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. And
Mm-hmm.
that gives you a sense of hope. You feel good, you feel better. If you're extremely depressed, it may only be a tiny band-aid for a moment, but you put enough band-aids on and eventually a wound will heal.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're really about people being resilient and smiling. So I may just be calling and being a friend.
Right.
I may just be listening. I may hear something icky, or hear a bad story, or hear somebody's health isn't, or somebody died. More often than that, unfortunately, because the more people you know. In fact, I was feeling bad at what my husband said, Andrea, it's only because your Rolodex is so big. You talk to so many people. That's why the occurrences of death seem so much greater.
Yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah.
and then I realized that the odds, the statistics of knowing a friend who's somebody passed in their life grows when you know that many
Yeah,
people.
absolutely. Yeah.
And so I've called people or found, or if I know something's challenging in someone, I'll call after the fact and say, hey, I realize it's been 3 or 4 months since your mom died. And I know Mother's Day is coming up in a month, and you probably started seeing Mother's Day cards at the store. So
Mm.
how are you doing with that? And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's that outreach that makes the difference to people. It's that love.
How much time do you think it would take, like for your network, if you've built it over like many years now? How many hours per week? I mean, because it's your thing, right? So this is like what you do. So it's going to be different
Yeah.
for maybe a regular coach who wants to build a network, maybe not as big as yours. So just for some context for the coach listening, you're probably not going to dedicate as much time as Andrea, but so how much time per week would it take for you to continue this network of yours?
So when I get on calls, some of my calls can be quite lengthy, especially the ones that I'll do late at night.
Yeah.
So when I say lengthy, I mean they can be 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So I've been on calls where they'll last an hour and a half. But most calls, for me, average around 20 minutes to half an hour. But because it's my business is to be a connector and to
Right.
use that to build these relationships, I do spend longer. So I am probably spending, I would say that I spend over 40 hours a week on the
Yeah.
phone just
Yeah.
talking to people. And that's text and phone calls. And then the rest of my time is connecting with people on social media and
Yeah.
connecting in person. And then that's not even doing my business yet. So you can hear, so technically it would sound like I work more than a 40-hour week, but to me, the phone calls, because I'm just caring about people, are not
Yeah.
work to me. They're just
Yeah.
part
Yeah.
of my, and some of these people have become my closest, bestest friends and
Right.
confidants.
Yeah.
Um, my best friend is AJ Poyden. AJ is a guru behind the gurus. He's called King Cato, and he's like written Les Brown speeches, and
Yeah. Wow.
he's like Alex Mendozian in the fact that they've like worked with everybody,
Yeah.
and you know, and I, AJ, I'm going to spend hours with him, but yet he's also my client.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
and so sometimes I get to the point where those relationships cross. So, for example, Jose has already expressed, he said, wow, I can't wait to see what we build this next year. And
Mm.
eventually, Andrea, I'd love for you to be a partner in my business,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I had somebody else ask me that the other day. They're like, how I want you to be a partner in what I do. And, that those are such joy to me. So
Yeah.
the relationships I'm building. So I actually spend less time working, and I'm talking more.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, do you have you've got such amazing connections. Do you have like a mastermind of some of these people, like that get together, or no? It's just one-on-one stuff that you do.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I used to help with other masterminds where they all came
Yeah.
together. So like I'll be on the Internet Marketers Cruise again this year, and I do the photography for it. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of wonderful people on that. However, I used to be part of a Bug-Free Mind, and I would help with sponsorship and getting people enrolled in that. And that's the top 100 internet marketers.
Yeah.
And that group is no longer meeting. And it dawned on me, wait a minute, where is something else for our movers and shakers, and so I've been thinking about that myself, because eventually you get to the point where you need to bring all these amazing people together. And
Yeah.
I thought, gosh, it would be imagine an event where we could all come together, where we hung out with Joe Polish, Jack Canfield,
Yeah.
Gene Simmons, all together in one thing, where we, Brian
Exactly
Tracy
right.
pulled him out,
Yeah. And all
get
because of
Lewis
you.
Howes
All because
to
of you,
come,
right?
sure, it'll help me, and it'll help the
No,
whole
no, no,
world.
not as in, I
Yeah.
said all because of you, right? Because of the
Oh, yeah.
relationship that
Yeah.
you've built.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be, I would be honored.
Call it the
And it would just
red
allow
carpet
people
connection
to,
event.
yeah. And we just literally have a really big red carpet event. Like the whole event is the red carpet.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
the
exactly
whole thing
right.
is like the event.
'Cause
And
that's
where you actually just get to be with them,
yeah, exactly.
and they get to be together,
And it's
because
like a
they're
real
doing,
mastermind. It's a real mastermind, not one of those masterminds, which is like one guru and all the people wanting to learn from them. It's a real mastermind
So
with all that.
I help mastermind. If I could only do one thing in the whole world, like if they said tomorrow, you can't do anything else, you can't call and talk to people or text them anymore.
Yeah, yeah,
What could you do? I would have masterminds. To
yeah,
me, being in other people's and being part of masterminds and running them. My one client, we ran masterminds we had 3 different levels of 300 total, so 100 in each level.
yeah,
And the ability to brainstorm and mastermind, I feel like every podcast is that, by the way, radio
yeah,
show. To me, that's what we're doing, is just
yeah,
thinking, what can we think of and bring to
yeah,
your
yeah,
audience so that they can have more marketing and sales? And what could, and I hope everything that you're hearing, you think, how can I implement this into my own life? I'm always asking people to do that. Don't think of me and Luke as being separate from you. Think of how I can create what they're doing and
right.
model it for
Well, that's the
myself.
whole reason for this podcast, is so they do that.
Yeah.
That's literally my opening. My literally in the opening of this podcast says, so you can take it and model it in your own business, like the strategies that we discuss. You can take and model in your own business. That's in the opening of this podcast.
And that's why I mentioned that.
So I'll slip you that 20 later on. Yeah.
We want to boost her in love on Luca. We can, because he's the reason that people are being brought together to play at a different level. And that's another thing too. Everything I do, I don't work. I mean, it's actually really funny. I play in the things that I do. I want to have fun and play, and I love going to events and hanging out with people, and yes, people see me and they're like, oh my gosh, Andrea, you work a room, I see you with your camera, you're talking to everyone, you're moving, you're doing all these things. And they're like, you must be exhausted, and they're like, I don't understand how you have this whirlwind of energy. And I get that energy because I choose to have that energy.
Yeah.
And being with people and helping them be at a richer level is one of the greatest joys of my life. So how can I not?
Yeah,
It's
I
fun.
love it.
Yeah.
All right. Just got one final question, Andrea. Now,
Sure.
let's pretend, and I ask this of every guest. Let's pretend that you're standing at the top of a mountain. You've got thousands of coaches below you, experts, professionals. My kookaburras have just it's 5:45 in the morning, so my kookaburras are just gone off. I don't know if you can hear them, but anyway, they're very loud.
I had a cat named Kookaburra.
Oh, really? Oh, funny.
Yeah, growing up, I love it.
Yeah, there's so we've got a tree just out here, and there's like 5 or 6 of them that go off every morning around this time. Anyway, so the question is, you're standing at the top of a mountain, there's thousands of coaches below. You can only shout to them one message to be successful in their business. What is that one message?
So that message would be, show up authentic and real, sharing what you truly want and desire with everyone. So think of a birthday cake with the candles. People tell you to make a wish and don't share it because they say that, your wishes won't come true. That's a lie. Actually, it's your parents lied to you. They started that because they thought you were going to ask for a pony or something, and that's expensive. So we've been ingrained that we shouldn't tell people what we want or desire. But when we ask for things or tell people what we want, then other people get to step up. I mean, look what you just did for me. I'd already been thinking about, what if I had this mastermind, this event with everyone? I'd already been thinking about that. Yeah. But you're the first person to ask me, what if I did? And so now that I'm sharing that, and say, now I'm curious, and now I wish we could see everybody. I wish I could see all 1,000 people's hands and say, who would want to come to that? Who wants to be a part of that?
Yeah, it better be a lot of people. That's why I asked, because I love masterminds too. That's literally why I asked, because I like, it's been a dream of mine to create a mastermind too of really high level business owners. So anyway, sorry, keep going.
Oh yeah. And I love traveling, so that's part of it. But yeah, that's it. And when you're real and authentic, then you don't have to worry about, I'm very, very real. I come from a town of 43,000 people, Findlay, Ohio, a little podunk little city. It's a beautiful city. I live out in the country, and I get to just be me. I don't have to put up any false pretenses. And there was times in my life I had to have this mask that I was something or perfect or whatever. And you don't have to do any of that. In
Mm,
fact,
mm.
the sooner you just be real and show your shine who you really are, then people can love you for who you are, and people will raise their hands, and the
Mm.
right people will work with you that are just amazing. It's when we stop being ourselves that we have challenges and so
Yeah,
forth. So that's
absolutely.
it. Be authentic, real, and ask for what you want. It's kind of
Great
a three
advice.
for one.
Great advice. All right, Andrea. Now, where can the coaches who are listening or watching go to learn more about you and what it is that you do? I notice you've got a link there in just
Yeah.
under your idea there. So,
So for those of you who are listening, it's www.theredcarpetconnection.com/free gifts with an S, free gifts, because you're getting more than one. That's my 7-day publicity challenge. So you get a whole bunch of videos. That's really kind of like a summary of what I do for different people what I need to be able to help publicize them to their highest value of what they can receive and what they can get. And I'm very thankful to have you guys show up and share that with you. Yeah.
no, that's actually,
By the way,
what's interesting is we didn't even get to the publicity piece. I actually would really love, if you're open to it, to have you back on again
I love it.
sometime in the near future to
Yeah.
talk about specifically publicity, because we don't usually talk about that either, which I'm very interested in as well. So yeah, we'll have you back on and talk about it. And they've got other
Oh,
awesome
sure.
different things that you're an expert on. So I'd love to
Yeah,
chat
yeah.
about the publicity side of things. But yeah, so to go to the redcarpetconnection.com/free gifts. And sorry, you were going to mention something else just there as well,
Well,
Andrea?
yeah. So I want people to start living red. So that's my little, hashtag living red and hashtag keep smiling. But
Yeah.
living red, I say red because I started living my brand. Red stands for relevance, enthusiasm, and delivery. When you
Mhm.
do all three, you hit your target market every time. And so I now see the color red as that. So I wear red. I started wearing red in the early 2000s, and I think I started wearing red all the time in like 2011.
Yeah.
So for over 11 years, well, I guess that would be like 13 years, I wear red every day. Like I don't even own clothes of another color.
Yeah. Wow.
And when you're that committed to something, it just allows you to remind you. So find something. You don't have to wear a color every day, but find something that means something to you that can help you live in your purpose.
That's a great idea. For the coaches listening, like, because what I teach is advertising, like how to get clients from advertising. Um, when you do it, when you're running your advertising, wearing something like either in your videos or the images that you advertise to help your market kind of recognize who you are. I've noticed other marketers do. Actually, there's a guy named Rudy, and in all of his ads, they're red, like they've got a red background or something. Just again, similar to you. He's not generally wearing red, but it's something to do with the background that's usually red, and that's what kind of people kind of recognize him for. Oh, he's that red guy, So interesting. I think it's a really great, just in terms of marketing and standing out. It's just to have something. So if you actually go to my website is very like even the background of this podcast you see here is like a synthwave, like 80s type
Oh yeah,
design,
it's fun.
right?
It's
Yeah,
so fun.
that's
Yeah,
like
I love
my thing, is the 80s synthwave style. So yeah, have something that makes you instantly unique or like recognizable.
you have a sticker of your back, a sticker like that, or stickers like that.
Do I?
So
What do you mean by stickers?
your background reminds me of the back of my laptop. So I have
Oh, okay.
stickers
Actually, look at
for
this.
people seeing.
The
And
my bit of art there.
oh
It's
yeah,
yeah. This background is
cool.
funny. This background is actually just the default of. So we're on Restream right now. It's just the default Restream background, so I haven't actually changed it. So it's interesting that it actually matches all my branding anyway. So that's why
Oh,
I've
but
left
see,
it.
I like it.
Yeah,
So
I do
I'm
too.
laughing. So my background, I usually am on Zoom, and Zoom I use a library because I grew up loving books, and
Yeah.
then my logos are up here. However, we live in we have the Elon Musk satellite, and it doesn't always work for high streaming.
I had it as well. Yeah,
Restream.
it's not great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's it's great for watching movies, but that's but
Yeah,
it doesn't do business. And so I'm at my daughter's house. So this is which my daughter has my old office. These used to be in my office, and
okay.
and so it's funny because I'm not used. I'm not used to not. I don't know how to do the backgrounds for Restream yet, so I decided not to worry about it and just
Okay,
be
cool.
authentic that I am where I am.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not sure how to. I don't know if Restream can do backgrounds like Zoom or anything. But anyway,
Yeah.
Andrea, thanks thanks for coming on. For those coaches listening, go to the redcarpetconnection.com/free gifts to get those free publicity gifts from Andrea. Now, yeah, once again, thanks for coming on, Andrea. I look forward to our second interview
Okay.
on the Six Figure Coaches Show. But thanks for coming on today.
You're very welcome. Talk to you